Hey everyone, picture this. It's a warm summer evening, and a mom's phone pings with a new message. It's a selfie from her teenage daughter, grinning ear to ear, out camping with her grandparents. The mom smiles at first, her girl looks so happy, surrounded by trees and that golden campfire glow. But then, something catches her eye. She zooms in on the photo, and her heart starts racing. There's something or someone in the background that shouldn't be there. Her hands shake as she stares at the screen, panic creeping in. What did she just see? That's where our story begins today, and trust me, it's gonna pull you in and keep you guessing. Now, let me set the scene a bit. We're talking about a family that's super close, mom, dad, and their daughter, Kayla, who's 16 and full of life. Kayla's the kind of kid who's always up for an adventure, whether it's hiking with her grandparents or just chilling with her friends at school. Her mom, Lisa, is a worrier, though every mom is, right? She's always checking in, making sure Kayla's safe, especially when she's out of sight. This camping trip was supposed to be a fun little getaway, a chance for Kayla to bond with her grandparents in the great outdoors. Lisa was nervous about letting her go, but she told herself to relax. It's just a weekend, she thought. What could go wrong? Kayla's grandparents, Ruth and Henry, are the coolest. They're the type who tell wild stories about their younger days, teach you how to fish, and sneak you extra marshmallows for s'mores. They've been taking Kayla on little trips like this since she was tiny, so Lisa trusted them completely. The plan was simple: a couple nights in the woods, some campfire songs, maybe a dip in the lake. Kayla was beyond excited. She'd been texting her mom nonstop about how she couldn't wait to roast hot dogs and sleep under the stars. And when that selfie came through, it looked like everything was perfect. Kayla's smile was huge, her grandparents were probably just out of frame, and the forest around her was peaceful. Or so it seemed. But let's talk about that photo for a second. Lisa's staring at it now, her thumb sliding across the screen to zoom in closer. At first, she's just admiring her daughter. Kayla's got her hair pulled back, a smudge of dirt on her cheek from exploring, and that big, goofy grin that always makes Lisa laugh. But then, her eyes drift to the background. It's dark, sure, but there's something weird about the shadows. Is that a person standing behind the trees? Or is it just a trick of the light? Lisa's stomach twists. She zooms in even more, her breath catching. The figure, if it is a figure, looks like it's watching Kayla. It's too far to tell for sure, but it's enough to make Lisa's mom instincts go into overdrive. She tries to stay calm. Maybe it's nothing, she tells herself. Maybe it's just a weird branch or an animal or something totally innocent. But Lisa's not the type to brush things off. She calls her parents right away, her voice shaky as she asks if everything's okay. Ruth picks up, sounding cheerful as ever, saying they're all fine, just getting ready for bed. Kayla's in the tent, Henry's putting out the fire, everything's normal. But Lisa can't shake the feeling that something's off. She asks Ruth to check on Kayla, just to be sure. There's a pause on the other end, and then Ruth laughs, saying, "Lisa, you worry too much. She's right here." But Lisa's not convinced. That photo's burned into her mind now, and she's starting to wonder if she should drive out there herself. Let's rewind a bit, though, because there's another story I need to tell you, and it's just as gripping. This one's about a kid named Marcus, a 17-year-old who's just trying to get through his day. Marcus is on a crowded bus, heading home from school, when he notices a pregnant woman struggling to stand. She's got that tired look, one hand on her belly, the other gripping the railing. Without a second thought, Marcus stands up and offers her his seat. It's a small thing, right? Just a kid being kind. But what happens next changes everything. The woman smiles at him, grateful, and settles into the seat. Marcus doesn't think much of it, he's just glad she's not swaying with the bus anymore. But as he's about to get off at his stop, she reaches out and hands him a folded piece of paper. "Read this later," she says, her voice soft but serious. Marcus is confused, but he takes it, stuffing it into his pocket. He's not sure what to make of her. There's something about her eyes, like she knows something he doesn't. He nods, says a quick thanks, and steps off the bus, the note burning a hole in his pocket. Now, Marcus isn't the kind of guy who gets caught up in drama. He's quiet, keeps to himself, and mostly spends his time helping out at home or studying. His mom's always telling him he's got a good heart, but he just shrugs it off. So when he gets home and finally pulls out that note, he's not expecting much. Maybe it's just a thank you, he thinks, or some random flyer she's passing out. But as he unfolds it, his jaw drops. The words on that paper aren't just a thank you, there's something else entirely. Something that could turn his whole life upside down. Back to Lisa for a moment. She's still staring at her phone, debating whether to call the police or just jump in the car and race to the campsite. Her parents keep saying everything's fine, but that photo's got her spiraling. She starts thinking about all the things she's heard on the news, people disappearing in the woods, strange encounters, things no one can explain. Her mind's running wild, and every second feels like it's stretching out forever. She texts Kayla, hoping for a quick reply, but there's nothing. Just silence. And that silence is louder than anything else. Meanwhile, Marcus is sitting on his bed, the note in his hands. He's read it 3 times now, and he still can't believe it. He wants to tell someone, his mom, his best friend, anybody, but the note's got him second-guessing everything. Should he follow what it says? Should he ignore it? He's just a kid who did a nice thing, how did it lead to this? He's got no idea what's coming, but he knows one thing. That woman on the bus wasn't random, and this note isn't just a piece of paper. Lisa's pacing now, her phone clutched tight. She's trying to call her parents again, but the signal's bad out in the woods, and the call keeps dropping. Her mind's stuck on that shadowy figure in the photo. Was it really there, or is she losing it? She thinks about driving out, but it's late, and the campsite's hours away. Every choice feels wrong, and the not knowing is eating her up. She looks at the selfie one more time, zooming in as far as the pixels will let her. And that's when she sees it, a detail she missed before. Her breath stops. It's not just a shadow. It's something much worse. And Marcus? He's still staring at the note, his heart pounding. He doesn't know what to do, but he knows he can't just sit there. The words on that paper are calling him to something bigger, something he's not sure he's ready for. He folds it up, slips it back in his pocket, and makes a choice. Whatever's next, he's stepping into it blind. So here we are, 2 stories, 2 moments hanging on the edge. Lisa's about to make a decision that could change everything for her and Kayla. Marcus is holding a note that's already shifting the ground under his feet. What's in the background of that selfie? What's written on that piece of paper? And how are these 2 stories connected? Stick with me, because we're just getting started, and the answers are gonna blow you away. Lisa sat frozen on her couch, the phone screen glowing in the dim light of her living room. That selfie from Kayla was still open, zoomed in so far the pixels blurred the edges of whatever she thought she saw. A figure, maybe. A shadow that didn't belong. Her thumb hovered over the call button, itching to dial her parents again, but the last 3 tries had gone straight to voicemail. The campsite was out in the middle of nowhere, where cell service was spotty at best. She cursed herself for letting Kayla go, for thinking a weekend in the woods would be fine. Her eyes flicked to the clock, 11:47 p.m. Too late to drive out there now, but too early to call the police without sounding like she was overreacting. Still, that image gnawed at her, like a splinter she couldn't pull out. She leaned back, closing her eyes for a second, trying to piece together the day. Kayla had been so excited that morning, bouncing around the kitchen with her backpack half-zipped, stuffing in extra socks and her favorite hoodie. "Mom, chill," she'd said when Lisa started fussing about bug spray and sunscreen. "Grandpa's got everything under control. It's just camping." Lisa had laughed then, brushing it off, but now those words felt like a taunt. She opened her eyes and scrolled through her texts with Kayla, looking for clues. The last one was from earlier that evening, before the selfie, having the best time. "Grandpa's telling ghost stories LOL. Nothing weird, nothing off. Just Kayla being Kayla." So why couldn't Lisa shake this feeling? Across town, Marcus was still sitting on his bed, the folded note now spread flat on his comforter. The words stared up at him, handwritten in neat, looping cursive that didn't match the shaky urgency he felt reading them. He'd expected a simple thank you, maybe a "you're a good kid" kind of thing. But this was something else. The note wasn't long, just a few sentences, but it was heavy, like it carried a weight he wasn't ready to pick up. He read it again, his lips moving silently, as if saying the words out loud would make them less real. "Meet me tomorrow. You'll understand why soon." An address was scrawled at the bottom, somewhere downtown he'd never been. No name, no explanation, just that. Marcus leaned back against the wall, his basketball shoes still on from earlier. The bus ride home had been normal, crowded, loud, the usual mix of people staring at their phones or out the windows. He'd only stood up for the woman because it felt right. She'd looked exhausted, her face pale under the bus's fluorescent lights, one hand cradling her belly like it was the only thing keeping her steady. When he offered his seat, she'd smiled, small, but warm, and said, "Bless you, young man." That was it. Or so he thought. Now, with this note in his hands, he wasn't so sure. Who was she? Why him? And what did "you'll understand why soon" even mean? Back at Lisa's house, the silence was starting to feel oppressive. She stood up, pacing the living room, her bare feet cold against the hardwood. She kept glancing at her phone, willing it to ring, for Kayla to text back with some silly emoji that would make this whole thing feel stupid. But nothing came. She thought about her parents, Ruth with her endless optimism, always humming old songs, and Henry, who could fix anything with a pocket knife and a bad joke. They'd never let anything happen to Kayla. Never. But that photo kept pulling her back, the blurry shape in the background like a question mark she couldn't answer. Lisa grabbed her laptop from the coffee table and opened it, her fingers trembling as she typed the name of the campsite into the search bar. Pinewood Lake, a family-friendly spot about 2 hours away. The website popped up, all cheery photos of kids canoeing and campfires crackling. Safe, fun, and unforgettable, the homepage bragged. She scrolled through reviews, looking for anything that might explain what she saw. Most were glowing 5 stars, happy families raving about the hiking trails and starry nights. But then, buried in the middle of the page, she found one that made her pause. 2 stars, posted a year ago. Beautiful place, but something felt off, it read. Kept hearing noises at night, like someone was walking around our tent. Never going back. Her mouth went dry. She clicked to see if the reviewer had said more, but that was it. Just a username, CampMom23, and no follow-up. She tried to tell herself it was nothing. Campgrounds were full of sounds, animals, wind, whatever. But the word "someone" stuck with her. She opened a new tab and typed Pinewood Lake incidents, her heart thudding. A few news articles came up, mostly about minor stuff: a lost hiker who turned up fine, a campfire that got out of control. Nothing serious. Nothing that screamed danger. Still, she kept scrolling, chasing a gut feeling she couldn't name. Marcus, meanwhile, had slipped the note under his pillow, like hiding it would make it less real. He got up and peeked out his bedroom window, the street outside quiet except for a stray cat darting across the road. His mom was still at work, pulling a late shift at the hospital, so the house was empty. He thought about texting her about the note, but what would he even say? "Hey, Mom, some lady on the bus gave me a weird letter." She'd probably tell him to throw it out and go to bed. Besides, he didn't want to worry her, she had enough on her plate. He wandered into the kitchen, grabbing a glass of water, his mind still on the woman from the bus. She hadn't looked like anyone special, just a regular person, maybe in her 30s, with tired eyes and a plain grey coat. But there was something about the way she'd handed him the note, like she'd been waiting for him specifically. He shook his head, trying to laugh it off. This wasn't a movie. People didn't just hand out mysterious notes to random kids. Maybe she was just being nice, and he was reading too much into it. But as he sipped his water, he couldn't stop picturing her face, the way her fingers had brushed his when she passed him the paper. Lisa was back on her phone now, scrolling through Kayla's social media for anything recent. Her daughter wasn't big on posting, but she'd shared a story earlier that day, a quick video of her and Henry trying to pitch the tent, both of them laughing as it collapsed. Lisa watched it on loop, searching the background for anything strange. The woods looked normal, just trees and dirt and sunlight filtering through. No shadows, no figures. She let out a shaky breath, telling herself she was being paranoid. But then she remembered something Kayla had said a few days ago, almost in passing. Grandpa said the campsite's got some old stories. Like, creepy ones. Lisa had brushed it off then. Henry loved his tall tales, but now she wished she'd asked more. She texted her best friend, Sarah, hoping for a reality check. Hey, you awake? Got a weird vibe about Kayla's camping trip. Sarah replied almost instantly, what's up? She okay? Lisa hesitated, her thumbs hovering over the keyboard. How could she explain without sounding unhinged? She sent a selfie, but there's something in the background. Probably nothing, but I'm freaking out. Sarah's response was quick, send me the pic. I'll look. Lisa forwarded it, her stomach twisting as she waited. A minute later, Sarah texted back, it's blurry, but yeah, that shadow's kinda weird. You call her yet? Lisa's heart sank. Even Sarah saw it. She tried calling her parents again, but the call wouldn't connect. She pictured them at the campsite, Ruth probably asleep in her sleeping bag, Henry snoring loud enough to scare the birds. Kayla would be curled up with her phone, maybe sneaking a few texts before bed. They were fine. They had to be. But Lisa couldn't stop imagining worst-case scenarios, someone lurking in the woods, watching their tent, waiting. She grabbed her car keys, then set them down. Driving out there in the middle of the night was crazy, right? Or was staying here crazier? Marcus was back in his room, lying on his bed, staring at the ceiling. The note was still under his pillow, and he could feel it there, like it was radiating heat. He thought about the address at the bottom. Downtown, near the old library, a part of town he didn't go to much. What would happen if he showed up? Would the woman be there, waiting? Or was it some kind of trick? He'd seen enough news stories about scams to know better than to trust random strangers. But this didn't feel like a scam. It felt personal. He rolled over, grabbing his phone to distract himself. He scrolled through his messages, half hoping one of his friends had texted something dumb to pull him out of this spiral. Nothing. He opened a group chat and typed, "Yo, ever get a weird note from someone you don't know?" then deleted it before sending. He didn't want to explain, not yet. Instead, he searched the address from the note online, just to see what came up. A coffee shop popped up first, someplace called the Daily Grind. Reviews said it was quiet, kind of artsy, with good lattes. Nothing sketchy. But that didn't mean anything, did it? Lisa was back at her laptop, digging deeper into Pinewood Lake. She'd found a forum now, one of those old-school ones where campers swapped stories. Most of the threads were about fishing tips or the best spots for stargazing, but one caught her eye. Anyone else see weird stuff at Pinewood? She clicked, her pulse picking up. The original post was from 2 years ago, someone claiming they'd seen a guy in the woods who didn't look like a camper. He was just standing there, watching us, the poster wrote. No gear, no flashlight, nothing. Creeped me out. A few replies brushed it off, probably a hiker, they said, but others chimed in with their own stories. Footsteps at night. Shadows moving between trees. One person even swore they'd found footprints around their tent that didn't match anyone in their group. She slammed the laptop shut, her breath ragged. This wasn't helping. It was making it worse. She picked up her phone again, staring at Kayla's selfie. The figure in the background wasn't clear enough to be sure of anything, but it was there. She could feel it. She thought about calling the campsite's ranger station, but what would she say? "Hi, my daughter sent a photo, and I think there's a ghost in it." They'd laugh her off. Still, she looked up the number, just in case. The website said the office closed at 9 p.m., but there was an emergency line. Her finger hovered over it, then stopped. Not yet. She needed more. Marcus couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the woman's face, the way she'd looked at him when she handed him the note. It wasn't just gratitude, it was like she knew him. But that was impossible. He'd never seen her before, not at school, not in his neighborhood, nowhere. He got up and paced his room, the floor creaking under his steps. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe she was just one of those people who liked messing with strangers. But the note didn't feel like a joke. It felt like a door, one he wasn't sure he wanted to open. He thought about his mom again, how she'd react if he told her. She was always saying he was too trusting, that he needed to watch out for himself. "You're a good kid, Marcus," she'd say, "but not everyone's good back." He wondered if this was one of those times. Still, he couldn't stop wondering what tomorrow meant. What would he find if he went to that address? Part of him wanted to tear the note up and forget it, but another part, the louder part, wanted answers. He sat back down, pulling the note out again. The ink looked darker now, or maybe that was just the light. Lisa was in the kitchen now, making coffee she didn't need. The clock said 12:32 a.m., and every tick felt like a countdown. She kept replaying her last conversation with Kayla, looking for anything she'd missed. It was just normal stuff, Kayla teasing her about packing too many snacks, promising to take lots of pictures. "I'll be fine, Mom," she'd said, rolling her eyes but smiling. Lisa had hugged her tight, like always, and watched her climb into her grandparents' old SUV. She'd waved as they drove off, the taillights fading down the street. Now, that moment felt like a lifetime ago. She went back to the living room, picking up her phone again. Still no texts, no calls. She opened the photo one more time, studying it like a puzzle. The figure in the background was just a smudge, but the more she looked, the more it seemed to have a shape. Arms, maybe. A head tilted toward Kayla. She shook her head, trying to clear it. She was tired, stressed, seeing things that weren't there. But what if they were there? What if Kayla was in trouble, and she was just sitting here? Marcus was thinking about his own mom now, how she'd raised him to be kind, to do the right thing even when it was hard. That's why he'd given up his seat, because it was what she'd taught him. But this note felt like it was pulling him somewhere else, somewhere he didn't understand. He wondered if the woman had picked him on purpose, or if it was just chance. Either way, he couldn't let it go. He set his phone alarm for early, telling himself he'd decide in the morning. Go to the address, or don't. Simple as that. But nothing about it felt simple. Lisa walked to the window, peering out at the dark street. The neighborhood was quiet, just streetlights and the occasional car passing by. She imagined Kayla out there in the woods, asleep in her tent, safe and sound. That's what she wanted to believe. But the photo wouldn't let her. She thought about her parents again, how they'd always been her rock. Ruth would be telling her to calm down right now, saying it was just her imagination. Henry would probably make a joke about Bigfoot. But they weren't here, and neither was Kayla. She sat back down, pulling a blanket over her lap. The house felt too big, too empty. She opened her texts again, typing out a message to Kayla. "Hey, sweetie, just checking in. You okay?" She hit send, watching the little delivered tag pop up. No reply. She waited, counting the seconds, then the minutes. Nothing. Her eyes went back to the photo, to that shadow that wasn't a shadow. She zoomed in again, her heart pounding. And then she saw it, a detail she hadn't noticed before. A glint, like eyes catching the campfire light. Marcus was finally drifting off, the note still tucked under his pillow. He dreamed of the bus, but it was empty except for the woman, sitting in his seat, smiling at him. She held out the note, but when he took it, it wasn't paper, it was heavy, like a stone. He woke with a start, his heart racing, the room still dark. The clock said 3:14 a.m. He reached under his pillow, feeling the note's edges. It was still there, still real. He lay back down, staring at the ceiling, wondering what he'd gotten himself into. Lisa was wide awake, her coffee cold on the table. She'd moved to the couch again, the phone in her lap, the photo still open. She couldn't stop looking at it, couldn't stop seeing that glint in the background. It wasn't just her imagination, she was sure of it now. Something was out there with Kayla, something her parents hadn't noticed. She thought about calling Sarah again, but it was too late, and she didn't want to drag her friend into this mess. Not yet. She needed to figure out what to do, but every option felt wrong. Stay here and wait. Drive to the campsite. Call for help. Each one came with its own kind of dread. She stood up, pacing again, her mind racing. She thought about Kayla's smile in the selfie, so bright and carefree. That's what she was holding on to, that her daughter was okay, that this was all a misunderstanding. But the glint in the photo kept pulling her back, like a warning she couldn't ignore. She grabbed her keys again, her hands shaking. Maybe driving out there wasn't so crazy. Maybe it was the only thing that made sense. She looked at the clock, 3:30 a.m. The road would be empty, the campsite quiet. She could be there by dawn. Marcus was up now, sitting on the edge of his bed. Sleep wasn't happening, not with that note sitting there like a challenge. He pulled it out again, reading it one more time. "Meet me tomorrow. You'll understand why soon." He traced the address with his finger, picturing the coffee shop. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was everything. He didn't know, but he knew he couldn't stay here wondering. He'd go, he decided. Just to see. Just to know. He set the note on his nightstand and lay back down, his mind still spinning. Lisa was at the front door now, her keys in one hand, her phone in the other. She opened the photo one last time, zooming in on that glint. It wasn't just light, it was something watching, something waiting. She didn't know what, but she knew she couldn't wait anymore. She stepped outside, the night air cold against her skin. The car was in the driveway, ready to take her to Kayla. She didn't know what she'd find at the campsite, but she knew she had to go. The photo was her only clue, and it was screaming at her to move. Lisa's car engine hummed softly as she pulled out of the driveway, the headlights cutting through the pre-dawn darkness. Her phone sat in the passenger seat, Kayla's selfie still open, that unsettling glint in the background haunting her every thought. The road stretched out empty before her, a 2-hour drive to Pinewood Lake that felt like it could take forever. Her hands gripped the steering wheel too tight, her knuckles pale. She kept replaying the moment she'd zoomed in on the photo, the way her stomach had dropped when she saw those eyes, or what she thought were eyes, staring back from the shadows. She didn't know what she'd find at the campsite, but sitting at home wasn't an option anymore. Kayla was out there, and so was whatever that thing was. The radio was off, the silence in the car heavy except for the faint hum of tires on asphalt. Lisa's mind raced, jumping between memories of Kayla and the nagging fear that she'd missed something earlier. Had Kayla seemed off when she left? Had there been a sign Lisa ignored? She thought back to the week before, when Kayla had been quieter than usual, spending more time on her phone, texting someone she wouldn't name. "Just a friend, Mom," she'd said, dodging Lisa's questions with that teenage shrug. Lisa hadn't pushed, not wanting to seem overbearing, but now she wondered if it was connected. Was Kayla hiding something? Or was Lisa just grasping at straws, trying to make sense of a photo that might mean nothing? Meanwhile, across town, Marcus was still awake, the note now crumpled slightly from being handled so much. He'd moved to the living room, sitting on the couch with the TV on low, some late-night infomercial droning in the background. The address on the note, 47, Harper Street, the daily grind, was burned into his brain. He'd looked it up again on his phone, zooming in on the map until he could picture the street corner. It wasn't far, maybe a 20-minute bus ride, but it felt like a different world. He kept asking himself why he was even considering going. He wasn't the kind of guy who chased mysteries. He went to school, helped his mom with groceries, played pickup basketball with his friends. Simple stuff. So why was this note pulling at him so hard? He thought about the woman on the bus again, trying to piece together every detail. Her grey coat, the way her hair was tucked behind her ears, the slight tremble in her hand when she gave him the note. She hadn't said much, but her eyes had locked onto his, like she was searching for something. Marcus wondered if he'd reminded her of someone, maybe a son, a nephew, someone from her past. Or maybe it was bigger than that. He pulled his hoodie tighter around him, the house too quiet without his mom's usual bustle. She'd be home soon, probably tired and cranky from her shift, and he'd have to decide whether to tell her. Part of him wanted to, but another part, a stubborn, curious part, wanted to figure this out on his own. Back on the road, Lisa's eyes flicked to her phone every few minutes, half expecting a text from Kayla or her parents. Nothing. She'd tried calling the campsite's emergency line before she left, but it rang and rang, no answer. That didn't help her nerves. She pictured Kayla in her tent, curled up in her sleeping bag, oblivious to whatever was out there. Ruth and Henry were probably snoring away, their old camping lantern flickering out. Lisa trusted them, she always had, but they weren't exactly spring chickens anymore. What if something happened, and they couldn't handle it? What if that shadow in the photo wasn't just a trick of the light? She passed a sign for Pinewood Lake, 78 miles to go. The road was starting to twist now, winding through hills that blocked the stars. Her mind drifted to a memory of Kayla as a little girl, maybe 6 or 7, on her first camping trip with her grandparents. She'd come home with a scraped knee and a huge grin, babbling about catching fireflies and learning to skip rocks. Lisa had laughed, kissing the top of her head, thinking how lucky Kayla was to have Ruth and Henry. Now, that memory felt sharp, like it was cutting her. She pressed her foot harder on the gas, the car picking up speed. She didn't care if she got there before dawn, she just needed to see her daughter. Marcus got up from the couch, restless, and wandered to the kitchen. He grabbed a bag of chips, more to keep his hands busy than because he was hungry. The note was still on the coffee table, folded neatly now, like it was waiting for him to make a move. He thought about his best friend, Jay, who'd laugh and call this whole thing a prank. Some ladies probably just bored, man, he'd say, tossing a basketball at him. But Jay wasn't here, and Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't a joke. He sat back down, opening his phone to search the coffee shop again. This time, he dug a little deeper, clicking through photos on its website. Cozy tables, chalkboard menus, baristas smiling. Nothing weird. But one picture caught his eye, a bulletin board in the corner, covered in flyers and notes. Was that where the woman wanted to meet him? Or was he overthinking it? Lisa's car hit a bump, jolting her back to the present. The road was narrower now, trees closing in on both sides. She glanced at the GPS, 45 miles left. Her phone buzzed, and her heart leapt, but it was just Sarah texting back. Any news? You okay? Lisa didn't reply, she couldn't, not with her hands shaking like they were. She kept picturing that glint in the photo, those maybe eyes watching Kayla. She tried zooming in closer before she left, but the image just got grainier, the shape dissolving into pixels. Still, it was enough to keep her moving, enough to make her wonder what else she hadn't seen. She thought about her parents again, trying to anchor herself in something solid. Ruth was the planner, always packing extra batteries and a first aid kit just in case. Henry was the storyteller, spinning tales about the woods that made Kayla's eyes go wide. But they weren't perfect. Ruth's knees weren't what they used to be, and Henry's hearing was spotty. Lisa hated thinking it, but what if they'd missed something? What if they hadn't noticed someone or something lurking nearby? She shook her head, trying to focus on the road. She was getting ahead of herself. She had to be. Marcus was back on the couch, the chips untouched beside him. He'd pulled up a local news site now, searching for anything about the daily grind or strange incidents downtown. Nothing stood out, just stories about a new park opening and some roadwork on Main Street. He switched to social media, typing the coffee shop's name into the search bar. A few posts popped up, mostly people tagging their friends in latte photos. But one comment, buried under a picture of a cappuccino, made him pause. Love this place, but it's kinda weird how that one lady's always there, just watching people. No name, no details, just a throwaway line. Marcus's stomach twisted. Was it her? He leaned back, rubbing his eyes. It was almost 4 a.m., and his mom would be home any minute. He needed to sleep, but his brain wouldn't shut off. He kept imagining showing up at the coffee shop, the woman waiting for him with that same intense look. What would she say? What did she want? He thought about his life, school, his part-time job at the corner store, saving up for a car. It wasn't perfect, but it was his. This note felt like it could pull him somewhere else, somewhere he wasn't ready for. But ignoring it didn't feel right either. Lisa's car climbed a hill, the headlights catching a deer that darted across the road. She slammed on the brakes, her heart pounding, the seatbelt digging into her chest. The deer vanished into the trees, and she sat there for a second, catching her breath. Her phone was still silent, no texts, no calls. She checked the signal, one bar, flickering in and out. Great. She thought about turning back, but she was too far now, too close to Kayla. She eased her foot back on the gas, the car creeping forward. The woods felt alive around her, branches swaying in the wind, shadows shifting just out of sight. She remembered a conversation with Henry a few weeks ago, when he'd been planning the camping trip. Pinewood's got history, he'd said, his eyes twinkling like he was about to launch into one of his stories. Old logging town, some say it's haunted. Lisa had rolled her eyes, telling him to stop scaring Kayla. But Kayla had leaned in, grinning, begging for details. Henry had laughed, saying it was just folklore tales of lost workers, strange lights in the trees. Lisa hadn't thought much of it then, but now those words felt heavier. What if there was truth to them? What if Kayla had stumbled into something no one could explain? Marcus heard the front door creak open, his mom's keys jingling as she stepped inside. "You still up?" she called, her voice tired but warm. He stuffed the note into his pocket, not ready to explain. "Yeah, just couldn't sleep," he said, forcing a smile as she walked into the living room. She looked at him, her nurse's scrubs wrinkled, her eyes narrowing like she could tell something was off. "Everything okay?" she asked, dropping her bag on the floor. Marcus nodded, but his hand stayed in his pocket, the note's edges pressing against his fingers. He wanted to tell her, really, he did, but the words wouldn't come. Not yet. Lisa was deep in the forest now, the road barely wide enough for her car. The GPS said 20 miles to go, but it felt like she was driving into nowhere. Her phone had no signal at all now, the screen blank except for Kayla's photo, still open from earlier. She kept glancing at it, that glint in the background pulling her like a magnet. She thought about her own childhood, camping with her parents, how safe she'd always felt. She wanted that for Kayla, those memories, that warmth. But now, all she could think about was getting to her, making sure she was okay. She passed a rusted sign for Pinewood Lake, half hidden by vines. The campsite was close, but the woods felt thicker, darker, like they were swallowing the road. She wondered what Kayla was doing right now, sleeping, hopefully, dreaming of s'mores and fireflies. But the photo wouldn't let her believe it. That shadow, that glint, it was something else, something watching. Lisa's hands tightened on the wheel, her breath shallow. She didn't know what she'd find at the campsite, but she knew she couldn't turn back. Marcus's mom was in the kitchen now, making tea, her voice floating out as she asked about his day. He answered in short bursts, his mind still on the note. He thought about the woman's words, "You'll understand why soon." What did that mean? Was it a promise? A warning? He pictured himself at the coffee shop, sitting across from her, hearing whatever she had to say. Part of him was scared, but part of him was curious, maybe even excited. He'd always played it safe, kept his head down. Maybe this was a chance to step out, to see what else was out there. Lisa's car rounded a bend, the campsite's entrance finally in sight. A wooden gate loomed ahead, closed but not locked, the ranger station dark beyond it. She slowed down, her headlights sweeping over the trees. No movement, no sound except the wind. She cut the engine, sitting there for a moment, her heart pounding. Kayla was somewhere in there, her parents, too. And maybe something else. She grabbed her phone, the photo still open, that glint brighter now, sharper. She stepped out of the car, the air cold against her skin, and took a deep breath. Whatever was waiting, she was here now. Marcus was back in his room, the note on his nightstand again. His mom had gone to bed, the house quiet once more. He lay down, staring at the ceiling, his alarm set for 7 a.m. He'd go to the coffee shop, he decided. Just to see. Just to know. But as he closed his eyes, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was stepping into something bigger, something that would change him. The note seemed to hum with possibility, or maybe danger. He didn't know which, but he'd find out soon enough. Lisa stood at the gate, her flashlight beam shaking in her hand. The campsite was silent, too silent, the kind of quiet that felt like it was holding its breath. She pushed the gate open, the creak loud enough to make her flinch. Her phone was useless now, no signal, no bars, but she kept it close, Kayla's photo her only guide. She started walking, the path crunching under her sneakers, her eyes scanning the darkness. Somewhere up ahead was her daughter, her parents, their tent. And somewhere, maybe, was that shadow from the photo, waiting for her to find it. Lisa's flashlight beam danced across the dirt path, catching on tree trunks and low-hanging branches as she moved deeper into Pinewood Lake's campsite. The air was sharp, heavy with the scent of pine and damp earth, and every step crunched louder than she wanted. Her phone was still clutched in her other hand, Kayla's selfie glowing faintly, that glint in the background like a beacon she couldn't ignore. The silence around her was unnerving, no crickets, no rustling leaves, just a stillness that pressed against her chest. She whispered Kayla's name under her breath, half hoping her daughter would hear it, half praying she wouldn't wake whatever else might be out here. The tent was close now, she could see the clearing ahead, a faint outline of canvas under the moonlight. But the closer she got, the more her stomach twisted, like she was walking toward something she wasn't ready to face. She stopped for a second, catching her breath, her flashlight sweeping the trees. The photo had her rattled, that shadow, those maybe eyes watching Kayla. She tried to convince herself it was nothing, a trick of the light or a weird reflection, but standing here in the dark, it felt real. Too real. She thought about her parents, Ruth and Henry, probably asleep in the tent, oblivious to her panic. They'd laugh at her in the morning, she told herself, Henry with his bad jokes, Ruth with her reassuring hugs. But what if they weren't laughing? What if they didn't know something was wrong? She shook her head, pushing the thought away, and started walking again, faster now, her flashlight bobbing with every step. Across town, Marcus was up with the sunrise, his sneakers laced tight, the note tucked in his jacket pocket like a secret he couldn't leave behind. The clock said 7:15 a.m., and his mom was still asleep, her bedroom door closed after her late shift. He'd scribbled a quick note for her, gone to meet a friend, back soon, and left it on the kitchen counter, hoping it was vague enough to avoid questions. The bus stop was a short walk, and the morning air felt crisp, waking him up more than he wanted. He kept touching the note through his jacket, its edges worn from being folded and unfolded so many times. Meet me tomorrow. You'll understand why soon. The words looped in his head, each one heavier than the last. He didn't know what he was walking into, but standing still wasn't an option anymore. The bus pulled up, brakes hissing, and Marcus climbed on, finding a seat near the back. The city was just waking up, delivery trucks rumbling, a few joggers out, streetlights still glowing faintly. He stared out the window, his reflection blurry against the glass, and tried to picture the woman from yesterday. Her grey coat, her tired eyes, the way she'd looked at him like he was more than just a kid on a bus. He wondered if she'd be at the daily grind when he got there, waiting with answers, or something else. His fingers tapped nervously on his knee, the note in his pocket feeling heavier with every mile. What if he was wrong to go? What if this was a mistake? But the bus kept moving, carrying him closer to whatever was waiting. Lisa reached the clearing now, her flashlight landing on the tent, her parents' old green one, sagging a little but still standing. It looked peaceful, almost too perfect, like a postcard of a happy camping trip. She called out softly, Kayla? Mom? Dad? Her voice sounded small, swallowed by the trees. No answer. She stepped closer, her heart hammering so loud she could feel it in her throat. The tent's zipper was closed, the fabric still, no sign of movement inside. She crouched down, shining her light through a mesh window, but it was too dark to see much, just shapes, maybe sleeping bags, maybe people. She called again, louder this time, Kayla. Still nothing. Her hands shook as she reached for the zipper, the metal cold against her fingers. She paused, glancing around the clearing. The campfire was just ashes now, a faint wisp of smoke curling up. Kayla's backpack was propped against a log, her water bottle glinting in the moonlight. Everything looked normal, but it didn't feel normal. That photo was still burning in her mind, the glint in the background sharper every time she pictured it. She scanned the trees, her flashlight catching on branches that looked too much like arms, shadows that seemed to shift when she wasn't looking. Was something out there, watching her right now? She gripped her phone tighter, the selfie still open, and forced herself to focus. She had to check the tent. She had to know. Marcus's bus stopped a block from the daily grind, the doors opening with a whoosh that made him flinch. He stepped off, the street quiet except for a guy sweeping the sidewalk outside a deli. The coffee shop was just ahead, its sign swinging gently in the breeze, windows fogged up from the morning chill. Marcus stood there for a second, his breath visible in the air, his hand in his pocket clutching the note. He could turn back, catch the next bus home, pretend this never happened. But his feet moved anyway, pulling him toward the door. The bell above it jingled as he stepped inside, the smell of coffee hitting him like a warm wave. A few people were scattered around, two women chatting at a corner table, an older guy reading a newspaper, but no sign of her. Not yet. He ordered a hot chocolate, mostly to have something to hold, and sat near the window, his eyes flicking to the door every time it opened. The note was on the table now, unfolded, the address staring up at him like a challenge. He checked his phone, 7:45 a.m. Still early. Maybe she wouldn't show. Maybe this was all a weird mix-up, and he'd laugh about it with Jay later. But his gut told him otherwise. He sipped his drink, barely tasting it, and watched the street outside. A woman in a grey coat passed by, and his heart skipped. She looked like her, didn't she? But she kept walking, not even glancing at the shop. He leaned back, his leg bouncing under the table, the waiting worse than anything. Lisa unzipped the tent slowly, the sound loud in the quiet clearing. She held her breath, shining her flashlight inside, expecting, hoping, to see Kayla's sleepy face, Ruth's messy bun, Henry's snoring sprawl. But the tent was empty. Sleeping bags were rolled up neatly, a lantern sat in the corner, but no one was there. Her stomach dropped, her flashlight shaking in her hand. "Kayla," she said again, her voice cracking. She stepped inside, the air stuffy, her light sweeping over every inch. Nothing, no phones, no shoes, no sign of them. She stumbled back out, her chest tight, and scanned the clearing again. The backpack was still there, the water bottle, the ashes. But where were they? She ran to the edge of the trees, her flashlight darting between trunks, her voice louder now, desperate. "Kayla. Mom. Dad." The woods swallowed her words, giving nothing back. She fumbled with her phone, the selfie still open, that glint mocking her. She zoomed in again, her hands trembling, and noticed something new, a faint outline around the shadow, like a hand reaching toward Kayla. Her breath caught, her knees weak. Was this real? Was she losing it? She turned back to the tent, her light catching on something near the campfire, a scrap of fabric, torn, half buried in the dirt. It looked like Kayla's hoodie, the one she'd been wearing in the photo. Marcus was still at the coffee shop, his hot chocolate cold now, the note untouched on the table. The door jingled again, and this time, he looked up to see her, the woman from the bus, no question. Same grey coat, same tired eyes, though she seemed different today, more alert, like she'd been waiting for this moment. She spotted him and walked over, her steps deliberate, no smile this time. Marcus's mouth went dry, his hand closing over the note like it could protect him. She slid into the seat across from him, her hands folded on the table, and said, "You came." Her voice was soft, but it carried a weight that made his skin prickle. He nodded, unable to speak, his heart pounding like it wanted to escape. She leaned forward, her eyes searching his face, and for a moment, he thought she might cry. "I wasn't sure you would," she said, her fingers twitching like she wanted to reach for something, him, maybe, or the note. He swallowed, finding his voice. "What's this about? Why me?" She didn't answer right away, just looked at him, like she was seeing someone else in his place. Then she reached into her bag, pulling out a small envelope, plain white, no writing. "This is for you," she said, sliding it across the table. "But you need to hear me out first." Marcus stared at the envelope, his hand frozen, the coffee shop fading around him. Whatever was in there, he knew it would change everything. Lisa was on her knees now, digging at the dirt around the torn fabric, her flashlight propped against a rock. It was Kayla's hoodie. She recognized the logo, the frayed strings. Her fingers shook as she pulled it free, the fabric damp, smelling of earth and something metallic. She held it to her chest, her breath hitching, her mind screaming that this wasn't right, that Kayla wouldn't leave this behind. She stood, swinging her light across the clearing, shouting Kayla's name until her throat burned. The woods stayed silent, but she felt it now, a presence, like eyes on her back. She turned, her beam catching nothing but trees, but the feeling didn't leave. Something was out there, and it knew she was here. She stumbled toward the tent again, her flashlight flickering, low battery, great timing. She grabbed Kayla's backpack, rifling through it for anything, a phone, a note, a clue. Just snacks, a hairbrush, a folded map. She opened the map, her hands clumsy, and saw a red circle drawn around a spot labeled Old Mill. Henry's handwriting, sloppy but clear. Her heart raced. Had they gone there? Why? She remembered his stories about the mill, how it was abandoned, maybe haunted, a place kids dared each other to visit. Was Kayla there now? With that shadow from the photo? Marcus's hand hovered over the envelope, the woman's eyes still on him. Open it later, she said, her voice low, almost a whisper. After we talk. He wanted to grab it, rip it open, demand answers, but something in her tone stopped him. She leaned closer, her hands clasped tight, like she was holding herself together. You did something kind yesterday, she said. That's why I chose you. Marcus frowned, his voice shaky. Chose me for what? She didn't answer, just glanced at the door, like she was expecting someone else. The bell jingled again, and Marcus turned, his pulse spiking, but it was just a barista carrying a tray. When he looked back, the woman's face was pale, her lips tight. We don't have much time, she said, and he felt the world tilt under him. Lisa was running now, the map clutched in one hand, her flashlight flickering in the other. The path to the old mill was overgrown, branches snagging her jacket, but she didn't care. Kayla was out there, her parents, too, and she wasn't stopping until she found them. The woods felt alive now, every snap of a twig making her jump, every shadow looking like that figure from the photo. She tripped, catching herself on a tree, her flashlight dropping to the ground. It went out, leaving her in darkness, her breath loud in her ears. She fumbled for it, her fingers brushing something cold, smooth, not a rock, not a stick. She froze, her heart stopping, as a faint sound came from deeper in the woods, a voice, maybe, or just the wind. But it sounded like Kayla. Marcus was gripping the table now, the envelope untouched, the woman's words echoing in his head. You need to know something, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. About who you are. He stared at her, his mouth open, no words coming out. The coffee shop was too warm, too loud, the clink of cups and hum of voices drowning out his thoughts. He wanted to run, to stay, to understand. She reached for his hand, her fingers cold, and he didn't pull away. Listen to me, she said, her eyes locked on his. It's not an accident you're here. The door jingled again, and this time, her head snapped up, her face tightening. Marcus turned, seeing a man in a dark jacket step inside, his eyes scanning the room. The woman's grip on his hand tightened, and she whispered, "Don't trust him." Lisa was back on her feet, her flashlight dead, the map her only guide under the faint moonlight. The voice, or whatever it was, had stopped, but she kept moving, her sneakers sinking into the mud. The mill was close, its silhouette looming through the trees, jagged and broken like a skeleton. She called Kayla's name again, softer now, afraid of who else might hear. The air felt thicker here, heavier, like it was pushing her back. She reached the mill's entrance, a gaping hole where a door used to be, and stopped, her breath catching. Inside, something moved, a shadow, quick and low, gone before she could be sure. Her hand tightened on the map, Kayla's hoodie still tucked under her arm. She stepped forward, her voice trembling. Kayla. It's Mom. The darkness swallowed her words, and somewhere inside, a floorboard creaked. Lisa stood frozen at the entrance to the old mill, the darkness inside swallowing her whispered call for Kayla. The creak of the floorboard echoed in her ears, sharp and deliberate, like someone or something had shifted their weight. Her flashlight was useless now, dead in the mud somewhere behind her, and the faint moonlight barely reached past the broken doorway. Kayla's hoodie was still clutched under her arm, its damp fabric a reminder of how wrong this all felt. She wanted to run inside, to scream her daughter's name until she found her, but her legs wouldn't move. That shadow she'd seen, quick and low, was burned into her mind, too much like the one in Kayla's selfie. Her breath hitched as she strained to listen, catching a faint rustle from deeper in the mill, not wind, not leaves, but something alive. Then, a voice, so soft she almost missed it, murmured, "Mom?" Lisa's heart leapt, but before she could answer, a hand grabbed her arm from behind, yanking her back into the night. She spun, her scream caught in her throat, and found herself staring at Henry, his face pale under his old baseball cap. "Lisa, what the hell are you doing here?" he hissed, his voice low, his grip tight. Her relief crashed into confusion. Where was Kayla? Where was Ruth? She pulled free, her words tumbling out. "Dad, I saw something in Kayla's photo, a shadow, eyes, I don't know. The tent was empty, her hoodie was torn, and now I heard her in there. Henry's eyes widened, but there was something off about his expression, a flicker of fear she didn't expect. He glanced at the mill, then back at her, his voice dropping even lower. You shouldn't be here. It's not safe. Lisa's stomach twisted. Not safe. What did he know? Before she could press him, a faint light flickered inside the mill, like a candle being lit, and Henry's face went rigid. Stay here, he said, but Lisa was already moving, her fear for Kayla stronger than his warning. Across town, Marcus sat rigid in the coffee shop, the woman's cold hand still on his, her whispered words, "Don't trust him," ringing in his ears. The man in the dark jacket was at the counter now, ordering a coffee, but his eyes kept darting toward their table. Marcus's pulse pounded, the envelope still unopened in front of him, the woman's grip anchoring him to the moment. Who is he? Marcus managed, his voice barely steady. The woman leaned closer, her breath warm against his ear. Someone who's been looking for you. 4 years. His heart stopped. Looking for him? Why? He wanted to ask, but her eyes flicked to the man again, and she pulled back, her voice urgent. Take the envelope and go. Now. I'll find you later. Marcus hesitated, his hand hovering over the envelope, but the man was turning now, his gaze locking onto them, and something in his stare made Marcus's skin crawl. He grabbed the envelope, stuffing it into his jacket, and stood, his chair scraping loud against the floor. The woman nodded, a quick, sharp motion, and Marcus moved toward the door, his legs shaky but carrying him forward. The bell jingled as he stepped outside, the morning air hitting him like a slap. He glanced back through the window, the man was still at the counter, but the woman was gone, her seat empty, like she'd vanished. Marcus's breath caught. Where did she go? He started walking, fast, his sneakers slapping the pavement, the envelope heavy in his pocket. He didn't know what was in it, didn't know who that man was, but her words, 4 years, kept looping in his head, each one tightening the knot in his chest. Lisa was inside the mill now, ignoring Henry's protests, her eyes adjusting to the dim glow of that flickering light. The air was thick with dust and mildew, the floor littered with broken boards and rusted tools. She called for Kayla again, her voice echoing off the walls, but no answer came. Henry was behind her, his steps heavy, muttering something she couldn't catch. The light was coming from deeper in, around a corner where the mill's old machinery loomed like ghosts. Lisa's heart raced, she was so close, she could feel it, but every shadow seemed to move, every creak felt like a warning. She clutched Kayla's hoodie tighter, its metallic smell stronger now, and realized with a jolt it wasn't just dirt. Her fingers brushed something sticky, and she held it up to the faint light, blood, smeared across the fabric, still wet. Her knees buckled, a sob catching in her throat, but before she could collapse, the light ahead went out, plunging them into darkness. Henry grabbed her again, his voice sharp. Lisa, we need to go now. But she shook him off, her panic turning to fury. Where's Kayla? Where's Mom? What aren't you telling me? He didn't answer, just pulled her toward the entrance, his strength surprising her. She fought back, twisting free, and ran toward where the light had been, her hands out, feeling her way through the dark. Something brushed her arm, fabric, maybe, or skin, and she froze, her breath loud in the silence. Kayla, she whispered, praying it was her. A low hum started, like machinery waking up, and the floor vibrated under her feet. Henry's voice came from behind, desperate now. Lisa, it's not what you think. But before she could turn, a figure stepped into her path, tall and silent, its eyes catching the moonlight just like the glint in the photo. Marcus was half a block from the coffee shop, his heart still racing, when he heard footsteps behind him. He didn't look back, just walked faster, his hand in his pocket, gripping the envelope like it could keep him safe. The street was busier now, people heading to work, but he felt exposed, like those eyes from the coffee shop were still on him. He ducked into an alley, his back against a brick wall, and pulled out the envelope, his fingers trembling. Just open it, he told himself. See what's inside. But before he could, his phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Don't open it yet. Wait for me. His breath caught. The woman. How did she have his number? He looked around, the alley empty, but the footsteps were closer now, steady and deliberate. He shoved the envelope back in his pocket and ran, his sneakers pounding, the city blurring around him. Lisa's scream echoed through the mill as the figure loomed closer, its face hidden in shadow, those glinting eyes fixed on her. She stumbled back, her hands up, Kayla's hoodie falling to the floor. "Who are you?" she choked out, her voice shaking. The figure didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, the hum of the machinery louder now, vibrating through her bones. Henry was shouting something, his words lost in the noise, but Lisa couldn't look away from those eyes. They weren't human, not quite. She thought of the photo, the stories Henry told, the blood on Kayla's hoodie. Her mind screamed that this was it, the thing that had been watching her daughter, but where was Kayla? Where was Ruth? The figure took a step, its hand reaching out, and Lisa's vision blurred with tears, her body frozen, waiting for whatever came next. Marcus burst out of the alley, the street opening up in front of him, but the footsteps didn't stop. He glanced back, catching a glimpse of the man from the coffee shop, his dark jacket unmistakable, his pace unhurried but relentless. Marcus's lungs burned, his legs heavy, but he kept running, weaving through pedestrians, his mind racing. Who was this guy? What did he want? The woman's words, "looking for you," for years, felt like a trap now, one he'd walked right into. His phone buzzed again, another text, "Keep moving. I'm close." He didn't know if he could trust her, didn't know if the envelope was worth all this, but he couldn't stop now. He turned a corner, the city swallowing him, the man's shadow still trailing like a ghost. Lisa's back hit the mill's wall, the figure inches away, its hand hovering near her face. The hum was deafening, the air thick with something she couldn't name, fear, maybe, or something older. Henry was there now, pulling at her, his voice breaking through. "Lisa, it's not what it seems. We didn't know." Didn't know what? She wanted to scream, to fight, but those eyes held her, glinting with a purpose she didn't understand. Somewhere deeper in the mill, a door slammed, and a voice, Kayla's, unmistakable, cried out, "Mom, help." Lisa's fear shattered into action, her body lunging past the figure, toward her daughter's voice, the darkness closing in around her. Marcus was at a crosswalk now, cars honking, his chest heaving as he scanned the street. The man was gone, at least. He couldn't see him, but the feeling of being watched hadn't left. His phone was silent, the woman's text stopped, the envelope still sealed in his pocket. He thought about throwing it away, ending this whole thing, but something stopped him. Her words, her eyes, the way she'd said "who you are." He crossed the street, his steps slower now, his mind torn between running and facing whatever this was. A shadow moved in a shop window, too close, and Marcus froze, his hand on the envelope, the world holding its breath. Lisa's body surged forward, her legs carrying her past the shadowy figure in the mill, its glinting eyes fading as Kayla's desperate cry, "Mom, help," echoed through the darkness. The hum of the machinery was deafening now, vibrating through the walls, but Lisa didn't care. Her daughter was here, alive, and nothing was stopping her. She stumbled over broken boards, her hands scraping against rusted metal, Henry's voice fading behind her as he shouted something about waiting, about danger. She didn't listen. The mill's air was thick, choking, but she pushed deeper, following the sound of Kayla's voice to a narrow stairwell leading down. Her heart pounded, the blood on Kayla's hoodie still smeared on her hands, but that cry gave her hope. Kayla was close, she had to be. The stairs creaked under her weight, leading to a basement lit by a single flickering bulb. Lisa's breath caught as she saw them, Kayla and Ruth, huddled in a corner, their faces pale but alive. Kayla's eyes widened, tears streaking her cheeks as she ran to Lisa, throwing her arms around her. "Mom, you're here," she sobbed, her voice muffled against Lisa's chest. Ruth stood shakily, her hands trembling, but before Lisa could ask what happened, she saw it, a makeshift altar in the center of the room, covered in candles, old photos, and strange symbols scratched into the wood. Her stomach twisted. This wasn't just an abandoned mill. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. She held Kayla tighter, her eyes locked on the altar, when Henry appeared at the bottom of the stairs, his face grim. "We tried to stop it," he said, his voice breaking. "We didn't know it'd go this far." Across town, Marcus's hand was still on the envelope, his body frozen at the crosswalk as the shadow in the shop window vanished. His phone buzzed again, no message this time, just a missed call from that unknown number. The city hummed around him, oblivious to the panic clawing at his chest. The man in the dark jacket was nowhere in sight, but Marcus felt him, like a weight pressing down. He started walking again, faster, his sneakers slapping the pavement, the envelope's edges digging into his palm. He needed answers, now. The woman's words, "who you are," burned in his mind, and he couldn't wait anymore. He ducked into a quiet park, his hands shaking as he tore open the envelope, his breath hitching at what he found inside: a faded photo of a boy who looked just like him, maybe 5 years old, and a letter with one line, "You're not who you think you are." Lisa pulled back from Kayla, her hands cupping her daughter's face, searching for injuries. "Are you okay? What happened?" Kayla's voice was shaky, her eyes darting to the altar. "We were camping, and Grandpa said he wanted to show me the mill, said it was just a cool old place. But then, someone was here, Mom. They locked us down here." Lisa's gaze snapped to Ruth, then Henry, her anger rising. "Who? Why didn't you call me?" Ruth's voice was hoarse, her eyes red. "We couldn't, Lisa. No signal, and then, they took our phones." Henry stepped closer, his hands up, pleading. "It's the stories, Lisa. The ones I told Kayla about the mill. They're not just stories. Some folks out here, they believe in something. Something old." Lisa's blood ran cold. The symbols, the candles, the blood on Kayla's hoodie, it wasn't random. This was a ritual. Marcus's knees buckled as he stared at the photo, the boy's face so familiar it hurt. The letter's words blurred in his vision, his mind racing to make sense of it. He wasn't who he thought. What did that mean? His mom, his life, everything he knew, none of it felt real anymore. He flipped the photo over, finding a date written on the back, 2008. He would have been 5 then. His hands shook as he stuffed it back in the envelope, his eyes scanning the park. No one was there, no man in a dark jacket, no woman in a grey coat, but he felt watched, exposed. His phone buzzed again, a text this time, "Run." His close. Marcus's heart stopped. He didn't think, just ran, his legs carrying him toward the park's exit, the photo and letter heavy in his pocket, his world unraveling with every step. Lisa turned to the altar, her fear mixing with rage. "What is this, Dad? What did you drag Kayla into?" Henry's face crumpled, his voice barely a whisper. "I didn't know, Lisa. I thought it was just folklore, ghost stories to spook the kids. But there's people out here, a group, they think the mill's special. They think it needs protecting." Kayla clung to Lisa, her voice small. "They said I was part of it, Mom. Because I came here." Lisa's breath caught, her eyes scanning the symbols, circles, lines, something that looked like a name. She grabbed Kayla's hand, then Ruth's, pulling them toward the stairs. "We're leaving. Now." But as they moved, the bulb flickered out, and footsteps, slow, heavy, came from above. Henry froze, his voice a hiss. "They're back." Marcus hit the street, his lungs burning, the city a blur of noise and color. He didn't know where he was going, just that he had to keep moving. The text, his close, was all he could think about. Who was he? The man in the jacket? Someone else? He thought of the woman, her eyes, her warning about not trusting him. The photo in his pocket felt like a bomb, ready to explode everything he'd ever known. He turned a corner, nearly crashing into a woman pushing a stroller, and muttered an apology, his eyes scanning for any sign of pursuit. A dark shape moved across the street, too quick to be sure, and Marcus's heart skipped. He pulled out his phone, his thumb hovering over his mom's number, but stopped. What would he say? He kept running, the truth in his pocket pulling him forward. Lisa's group crept up the stairs, the footsteps above growing louder, deliberate. Kayla's hand was sweaty in hers, Ruth's breathing ragged behind. Henry led the way, his pocket knife out, though it looked useless against whatever was coming. The mill's darkness pressed in, the air thick with that same metallic smell from Kayla's hoodie. Lisa's mind raced the selfie, the glint, the altar. It was all connected, but how? They reached the main floor, the moonlight spilling through the broken doorway, and Lisa's hope flared. They could make it to the car, get out before whoever was here found them. But as they stepped forward, a figure appeared in the entrance, not the one from before, but a woman, her face half hidden by a hood, holding something that glinted like a blade. "You shouldn't have come," she said, her voice calm, almost sad. Lisa pushed Kayla behind her, her voice steady despite her fear. "Let us go. We're not part of this." Marcus was at a bus stop now, his chest heaving, his eyes darting for any sign of the man. The street was quiet, the morning crowd thinning, but he couldn't shake the feeling of being hunted. He pulled out the photo again, staring at the boy's face, his face, he was sure of it now. The letter's words echoed, "You're not who you think you are." He thought of his mom, her late shifts, her tired smiles, the way she'd always said he was her whole world. Was it a lie? His phone buzzed, a call this time, the unknown number again. He answered, his voice shaky. "Who is this?" The woman's voice came through, soft but urgent. "Marcus, listen. You're in danger, but you're also the key. That photo, it's you, but it's more. Meet me at the old bridge, now." He started to ask what she meant, but the line went dead, and across the street, the man in the jacket stepped out from a doorway, his eyes locked on Marcus. Lisa stared at the woman in the mill, her heart pounding, Kayla's sobs quiet behind her. The blade caught the moonlight, its edge sharp enough to make Lisa's skin prickle. Henry stepped forward, his knife raised, but the woman didn't flinch. "You don't understand," she said, her eyes flicking to Kayla. "She was chosen. The mill needs her." Lisa's rage exploded. "She's my daughter. You don't get to choose her." The woman's face softened, almost pitying, and she lowered the blade slightly. "It's not me. It's bigger than all of us." Before Lisa could respond, a low hum started again, the floor shaking, and the altar's symbols glowed faintly in the basement below, like they were waking up. Ruth gasped, clutching Lisa's arm, and Henry's knife dropped, his face ashen. "They're here," he whispered, and Lisa realized he didn't mean the woman. Marcus sprinted toward the old bridge, the man's footsteps heavy behind him. The photo and letter were still in his pocket, the woman's voice on the phone pushing him forward. The bridge was close, its rusted frame looming over the river, and Marcus could see her now, the woman from the bus, standing at the center, her gray coat flapping in the wind. He reached her, gasping, and she grabbed his shoulders, her eyes fierce. "You're not just Marcus," she said, her voice trembling. "You're part of something, someone they've been searching for. That man, he works for them." Marcus's mind reeled, the photo's face flashing in his head. "Who am I?" he demanded, but before she could answer, the man appeared at the bridge's edge, a gun glinting in his hand. The woman pushed Marcus behind her, her voice steady. "You're too late," she told the man, but her eyes said otherwise. Lisa's group backed away from the woman with the blade, the mill's hum growing louder, the symbol's glow creeping up the stairs. Kayla clung to Lisa, whispering, "Mom, what's happening?" Lisa didn't know, but she knew they had to move. She pulled Kayla and Ruth toward the side of the mill, where a broken window offered a way out. The woman didn't follow, her eyes distant, like she was listening to the hum. Henry stayed behind, facing her, his voice low. "This isn't right, Clara. You know it." Lisa froze. Clara? Her dad knew her. But there was no time to ask. She pushed Kayla through the window, helping Ruth next, the glass scraping her hands. The hum was a roar now, the air electric, and as Lisa climbed out, she saw shapes moving in the mill, more figures, their eyes glinting like the one in the photo. They weren't alone. Marcus ducked behind the woman on the bridge, the man with the gun advancing, his face calm but cold. "Give me the boy," he said, his voice flat. The woman laughed, bitter. "You can't have him. Not after everything." Marcus's heart raced, his hand on the photo, the truth so close he could taste it. "Tell me," he whispered to her, desperate. She turned, her eyes soft for the first time. "You were taken, Marcus. Hidden. To keep you safe from them." Before he could process it, a shot rang out, not from the man, but from behind him. He fell, blood pooling, and Marcus spun to see another figure, a woman, older, her face familiar in a way that stopped his breath. The woman in the grey coat gasped, "No," and Marcus realized the truth wasn't just in the photo. It was her, the new woman, stepping forward, her gun still raised, her eyes locked on him like he was her whole world. Lisa and her family stumbled into the woods, the mill's hum fading but the glinting eyes still in her mind. Kayla was shaking, Ruth barely keeping up, and Lisa's hands stung from the glass. They reached the car, piling in, Lisa's keys trembling as she started the engine. "What about Grandpa?" Kayla cried, but Lisa didn't answer, she couldn't. The mill was alive behind them, its windows glowing now, and she floored the gas, the tires spinning on dirt. They were safe, they had to be, but as they sped away, Lisa glanced at Kayla's hoodie, still in her lap. A small carving fell out, a symbol, like the ones on the altar, etched with her initials. Her blood ran cold. This wasn't over. Marcus stood on the bridge, the older woman's gun lowering, her face crumpling as she looked at him. "Marcus," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm your mother." The woman in the grey coat stepped back, tears in her eyes, and Marcus's world shattered. His mom, the one at home, wasn't his mom. The photo, the letter, the chase, it all clicked, but not enough. The man was dead, but sirens wailed in the distance, and the older woman reached for him, her hand trembling. "We have to go," she said, but Marcus couldn't move, the envelope falling to the ground, the boy's face staring up at him. His face. Her face. And somewhere, deep down, a memory stirred her voice, singing to him, years ago, before everything changed. The car's engine roared as Lisa sped away from Pinewood Lake, the mill's eerie glow fading in the rearview mirror. Kayla sat in the passenger seat, her arms wrapped around herself, still shivering despite the heater blasting. Ruth was in the back, her breathing uneven, her hands clasped tight like she was praying. The symbol-etched carving, Kayla's initials stark against the dark wood, lay in Lisa's lap, a weight heavier than its size. She gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white, her mind reeling from what they'd escaped. Kayla was safe, Ruth was here, but Henry was still back there, and that name, Clara, kept echoing in her head. Who was she? How did her dad know her? And what did that carving mean? The road stretched dark and empty, but Lisa felt anything but free. The woods seemed to watch them, their shadows too long, too alive. Kayla's voice broke the silence, small and shaky. "Mom, what was that place? Why'd they want me?" Lisa's throat tightened. She wanted to say something comforting, to promise it was over, but the carving in her lap said otherwise. "I don't know, sweetie," she admitted, her voice soft. "But you're with me now. That's what matters." Kayla nodded, but her eyes stayed on the window, watching the trees blur past. Lisa glanced at Ruth in the mirror, hoping for answers, but her mom's face was drawn, her lips pressed thin. "Mom," Lisa said, sharper than she meant. "What did Dad mean? About not knowing it'd go that far?" Ruth's eyes met hers, then dropped. "Later, Lisa," she whispered. "Please." Lisa's stomach twisted, but she didn't push, not yet. They needed to get home, to feel safe, before she could unravel whatever Henry had left behind. Across town, Marcus stood rooted to the old bridge, the woman claiming to be his mother just steps away, her gun now at her side, her eyes wet with tears. The woman in the grey coat, Ellen, she'd said her name was, stood back, her face a mix of relief and pain. The man in the dark jacket lay dead at the bridge's edge, blood pooling under him, and the distant sirens were getting louder. Marcus's hand shook, the envelope and photo scattered on the ground, the boy's face, his face, staring up from 2008. "You're my mother," he said again, his voice cracking, the words too big to fit in his head. The woman, Grace, she'd called herself, nodded, stepping closer, her hand reaching for him. "I never stopped looking for you," she said, her voice breaking. "They took you, Marcus. To keep you from me." His mind spun, memories of his mom, the one at home, with her tired smiles and late shifts, clashing with this stranger's face, her voice stirring something deep, like a song he'd forgotten. Ellen spoke now, her words rushed. "We don't have time, Grace. They'll be here soon." Marcus's eyes flicked to the body, then the photo, then Grace. "Who's they? What's happening?" Grace's face hardened, but her hand stayed soft on his arm. "People who wanted you for what you represent. A symbol, a hope. I'll explain everything, I promise, but we have to move." The sirens wailed closer, red and blue lights flashing at the street's end, and Marcus's legs felt like lead. Run with her, or stay and face whatever came next. His whole life felt like a lie, and the truth was slipping through his fingers. Lisa's car hit the highway, the forest finally giving way to open road. Kayla had fallen quiet, her head against the window, her breathing steadier now. Lisa's hands loosened on the wheel, but her mind wouldn't rest. The carving was still there, its edges smooth, like it had been handled often. She thought of the mill, the altar, those symbols glowing in the dark. Henry's words, "It's not what you think," played on repeat, and Clara's face, half hidden by that hood, lingered like a ghost. Lisa glanced at Ruth again, her mom's silence louder than any answer. "Mom," she said, her voice low so Kayla wouldn't hear. "You knew something, didn't you? About Dad, about that place." Ruth's shoulders tensed, but she didn't look up. "It was years ago," she said finally, her voice barely audible. "Stories he heard, people he met. We thought it was harmless." Lisa's chest tightened. Harmless? Kayla had been locked in a basement, blood on her hoodie, symbols carved with her name. "Harmless doesn't do this," she snapped, her voice shaking. Ruth's eyes met hers in the mirror, red and tired. Henry got curious, Lisa. Too curious. He found people, locals, who believed the mill was special. Said it held power, something tied to the land. He didn't believe it, not really, but he kept going back. For the stories. Lisa's breath caught. Stories. The ones he'd told Kayla, the ones that drew her to the mill. "And Clara?" she asked, her voice sharp. Ruth hesitated, then whispered, "She was one of them. A believer." He thought she was just eccentric until tonight. Lisa's hands shook, the carving burning in her lap. Her dad hadn't just stumbled into this. He'd been part of it. Marcus ran with Grace and Ellen, the bridge fading behind them as they slipped into an alley, the sirens screaming past. His lungs burned, the photo and letter still in his pocket, their weight pulling at him. Grace's hand was firm on his wrist, guiding him through narrow streets, Ellen close behind, her eyes scanning for trouble. "Where are we going?" Marcus gasped, his voice rough. Grace didn't slow, her voice steady despite their pace. "Somewhere safe. Away from them." He wanted to stop, to demand the whole story, but the fear in her eyes, the same fear he'd seen in Ellen's, kept him moving. The man's body flashed in his mind, the gun, the blood. Whoever they weren't playing games. They ducked into an old warehouse, its windows boarded, the air thick with dust. Grace finally stopped, her breath heavy, and turned to Marcus, her face softer now. "I know this is too much," she said, her hand on his shoulder. "But you're my son. I lost you when you were 5, taken by people who thought you were important. A child born under certain stars," they said. Marcus's head spun, the letter's words, "You're not who you think you are," ringing true. He pulled out the photo, his voice shaking. "This is me, isn't it?" Grace nodded, tears spilling. "I took it the day before they came. I've carried it ever since." Ellen stepped forward, her voice gentle. "I helped her find you, Marcus. I've been watching, waiting for the right moment. That's why I gave you the note." Lisa's car pulled into their driveway just as dawn broke, the sky a soft pink that felt wrong after the night they'd had. Kayla stirred, blinking at the house like it was a dream, and Lisa reached for her hand, squeezing it tight. "We're home," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Ruth climbed out slowly, her face etched with guilt, and Lisa followed, the carving tucked in her pocket now, its edges pressing against her thigh. Inside, the house was quiet, too normal, dishes in the sink, Kayla's sneakers by the door. Lisa locked the door behind them, her hands still trembling, and turned to Ruth. "No more waiting," she said, her voice low. "Tell me everything. Now." Kayla curled up on the couch, watching them, her eyes wide but tired, and Lisa hated how much her daughter had seen. Ruth sat heavily, her hands twisting in her lap. "It started years ago," she said, her voice shaky. "Henry loved the woods, you know that. He'd talk to anyone, hikers, locals, old-timers. One summer, he met Clara at Pinewood. She told him about the mill, said it was a place of power, tied to some old ritual. He thought it was nonsense, but he kept going back, asking questions. Clara introduced him to others, a group, small but devoted. They believed the land needed a sacrifice, something to keep it alive. Lisa's blood ran cold. A sacrifice, she whispered, glancing at Kayla, who was listening now, her face pale. Ruth nodded, tears falling. Not like you think, not killing. They wanted someone to carry the land's story, to belong to it. Henry didn't believe it, but he stayed close, thinking he could learn more. He never thought they'd choose Kayla. Lisa's rage flared, but it was drowned by fear. Choose her for what? Ruth's voice broke. To stay. To be part of their ritual, tied to the mill forever. That's why they took her there, why they locked us in. Clara said it was her destiny. Lisa's hand went to the carving, her fingers tracing Kayla's initials. And this? She asked, holding it up. Ruth's eyes widened. They gave it to her. A mark, they said. To show she was chosen. Kayla's voice was small, barely a whisper. They said I'd feel the woods, Mom. Like they were alive. Lisa pulled her close, her heart breaking. You're not theirs, she said fiercely. You're mine. But the carving felt alive in her hand, its weight a reminder that the mill wasn't done with them. Marcus sat on a crate in the warehouse, the photo in his hands, Grace and Ellen watching him like he might break. The sirens had faded, the city waking up outside, but inside, time felt frozen. So I was stolen, he said, his voice raw. Grace nodded, sitting beside him, her hand hovering like she wasn't sure he'd let her touch him. You were born during a rare alignment, stars, planets, things I didn't understand then. They believed it made you special, a key to something bigger. Power, maybe, or hope. They took you from me, gave you to another family to keep you hidden. I've been searching ever since. Marcus's mind flashed to his mom, his other mom, her late shifts, her love. Did she know? He asked, his voice trembling. Grace's face softened. No. She thought you were hers. They made sure of it. Ellen spoke now, her voice steady. I was part of their group, years ago. Not a believer, just curious. When I saw what they did to Grace, I left. I've been helping her ever since, tracking you. The man on the bridge, he was one of theirs, sent to bring you back. Marcus's stomach twisted, the letter's words sharper now. Back for what? Ellen hesitated, then said, they think you can finish what they started. A ritual, tied to you, to something they've been building for years. Marcus's hand closed over the photo, his face, his younger self, staring back. And if I don't? Grace's voice was fierce. You don't have to. You're my son, not their symbol. We'll keep you safe. But her eyes flicked to the warehouse door, like she knew safety was a promise she couldn't keep. Lisa was in the kitchen now, making tea, her hands moving on autopilot while Kayla showered upstairs. Ruth sat at the table, the carving between them, its symbols catching the morning light. Lisa's phone was charging, no new messages, no word from Henry. She'd called the police on the drive home, reporting the mill, Clara, everything, but they'd sounded skeptical, promising to check. She didn't trust them to find her dad or to understand what they'd walked into. Mom, she said, setting a mug in front of Ruth. What happens now? If they think Kayla's theirs, will they come for her? Ruth's hands shook as she took the mug, her voice low. I don't know, Lisa. Henry said they'd never hurt her, that it was about belonging, not harm. But after last night, she trailed off, her eyes on the carving, and Lisa knew she was thinking of Clara's blade, the glowing symbols, those glinting eyes. Kayla came downstairs, her hair wet, her face cleaner but still drawn. She sat next to Lisa, her hand finding her mom's. I'm sorry, she whispered. I shouldn't have gone to the mill. Lisa's heart ached, and she pulled Kayla close. This isn't your fault, sweetie. None of it. She looked at Ruth, her voice firm. We need to find Dad. And we need to make sure they can't come after her again. Ruth nodded, but her eyes were distant, like she was seeing Henry in that mill, facing Clara alone. Lisa's phone buzzed, a text from Sarah. You okay? Heard about Pinewood on the news. Lisa's breath caught. The news. She opened her phone, searching, and found it, a local report about a disturbance at the mill, police on scene, no details yet. Her hands shook as she typed back, "We're home. Call me later." But her eyes stayed on the carving, its initials a quiet threat. Marcus was walking now, Grace and Ellen flanking him, the warehouse behind them as they moved through the city's back streets. The photo was in his pocket, the letter too, but he hadn't looked at them again, not yet. Grace's story was still sinking in, her voice filling the gaps as they walked. "I found you through Ellen," she said, her eyes on the ground. She'd been watching the group, saw you with the woman who raised you. We waited, planned, until we could reach you without them knowing. Marcus's throat tightened. "Why now?" Grace's face was grim. They were closing in. That man, he wasn't alone. They've been tracking you, waiting for the right time. Marcus's mind flashed to the note, Ellen's handwriting, the coffee shop. "The right time for what?" he asked, his voice sharp. Ellen answered, her voice low. "An event. Something they've been preparing for years. You're the last piece." They stopped at a small motel, its neon sign flickering, and Grace paid for a room in cash, her movements quick, practiced. Inside, Marcus sat on the bed, his hands clasped, the weight of everything crushing him. "So I'm supposed to just run? Forever?" Grace knelt in front of him, her eyes fierce. "No. We fight. We end this. But first, you need to know who you are." She pulled a necklace from her pocket, a small pendant carved with a symbol, a circle, lines branching out, like the one in his letter. "This was yours," she said, pressing it into his hand. "Before they took you." Marcus's fingers closed around it, the metal warm, and for the first time, he felt a spark of something, memory, maybe, or truth. But the motel window rattled, a shadow passing outside, and Ellen's hand went to her pocket, her face tight. "They're here," she whispered. Lisa was on the phone with the police now, her voice steady as she gave them everything, Clara's name, the altar, Henry's absence. Kayla was upstairs, asleep finally, and Ruth was pacing, her guilt a heavy cloud. The officer promised to follow up, said they'd found items at the mill but no suspects yet. Lisa hung up, her eyes on the carving, now on the kitchen counter. She searched online for Pinewood Lake, digging deeper than before, and found a forum thread she'd missed, a local historian talking about the mill's past, its ties to an old group who believed the land was alive, needing keepers to protect it. The symbols matched the carving, the altar, and Lisa's heart sank. This wasn't new. It was old, rooted deep, and Kayla had been pulled into it because of Henry's curiosity. She called Sarah, needing a friend, and poured out the story, the selfie, the shadow, the mill, the carving. Sarah listened, her voice calm but worried. "Lisa, you need to get that thing out of your house. It's not safe." Lisa's hand hovered over the carving, its wood warm under her fingers. "What if it's tied to Kayla? What if they use it to find her?" Sarah's silence was answer enough. Lisa wrapped the carving in a dish towel, tucking it into a drawer, but it didn't feel like enough. The news played in the background, a reporter at Pinewood now, talking about unexplained artifacts and a missing camper, Henry, she knew. Her chest ached, but she couldn't cry, not yet. Kayla needed her strong, and Ruth needed her to hold it together. Marcus was in the motel bathroom, splashing water on his face, the pendant around his neck now, its weight grounding him. Grace and Ellen were outside, talking in low voices, planning their next move. He looked in the mirror, his face the same but different, like the boy in the photo was staring back. His mom, the one who raised him, felt so far away, her love real but built on a lie. He texted her, his fingers hesitating, "I'm okay, just need some time. I'll explain soon." He hit send, his throat tight, knowing she'd worry but not ready to face her. Not until he understood. Grace knocked, her voice soft. "We're leaving soon. They won't stop, Marcus." He nodded, even though she couldn't see, and gripped the pendant, its symbol a piece of a puzzle he was still solving. Lisa sat with Ruth late into the morning, the house quiet except for Kayla's soft snores upstairs. Ruth's story spilled out now, no more holding back, Henry's trips to the mill, his talks with Clara, the group's growing hold on him. He thought he could study them, Ruth said, her voice hollow. Like they were a project. But they saw him as one of theirs, and when Kayla came along, she stopped, tears falling. Lisa's hand found hers, squeezing tight. "We'll find him," she said, though she wasn't sure she believed it. The carving was still in the drawer, its presence loud despite the towel, and Lisa knew they couldn't stay here, not with that thing in their house. She called the police again, pushing for answers, and they confirmed a search was on for Henry, but Clara was gone, no trace. Marcus and his group moved at dusk, slipping out of the motel into a borrowed car, Ellen driving, Grace beside her, Marcus in the back. The pendant hung heavy against his chest, its symbol a link to a life he didn't remember. Grace turned, her face soft but urgent. "We're going to a safe house, Marcus. Somewhere they can't find us. Then we'll figure out how to stop them." He nodded, but his mind was on the letter, the photo, the man's body on the bridge. "What do they want with me?" he asked, his voice steady now, demanding truth. Ellen glanced at him in the mirror. "It's not just you. It's what you carry, hope, power, whatever they call it. They think you'll complete their work, something they've been chasing for decades." Marcus's hand tightened on the pendant, his heart racing. "And if I don't?" Grace's voice was fierce. "You won't. You're my son, not their pawn." Lisa packed bags for her and Kayla, her hands moving fast, Ruth watching from the doorway. "Where will you go?" Ruth asked, her voice small. Lisa didn't look up. "Somewhere safe. A hotel, maybe, until we know they're not coming for her." The carving was in a plastic bag now, tucked in her purse, too dangerous to leave behind. She'd called a friend of Henry's, a retired ranger who knew Pinewood, and he'd promised to dig into the group's history, find names, places, anything to track Clara. Kayla came downstairs, her backpack slung over one shoulder, her face braver now. "I'm okay, Mom," she said, though her eyes flicked to the purse, knowing what was inside. Lisa hugged her, fierce and quick. "We're gonna be fine," she said, and this time, she almost believed it. The safe house was a small cabin, miles from the city, surrounded by fields that felt open but exposed. Marcus sat at a rickety table, Grace making coffee, Ellen checking the locks. The pendant was still around his neck, its symbol a quiet hum against his skin. He'd read the letter again, its one line, "You're not who you think you are," less a mystery now, more a truth he was starting to accept. Grace sat across from him, her hands wrapped around a mug. "I know it's hard," she said, her voice soft. "But you're here now. With me." Marcus nodded, his throat tight. "What about her? The woman who raised me?" Grace's face softened. "She loved you, Marcus. That's real. We'll find a way to tell her, when it's safe." He wanted to believe her, but the pendant felt heavy, like it carried more than just memory. Lisa and Kayla checked into a motel, its neon sign buzzing outside their window. Ruth stayed behind, insisting she'd wait for news about Henry, her guilt too heavy to leave. Lisa tucked the carving into the room's safe, its symbols hidden but not forgotten. Kayla sat on the bed, scrolling her phone, her face brighter now, like distance from the mill had lifted something. "Can we go home soon?" she asked, her voice hopeful. Lisa smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Soon," she said, though she wasn't sure. The ranger friend called later, his voice grim. Clara's group had been around for decades, small but stubborn, tied to old land rights no one fully understood. "They're scattered now," he said. "Police spooked them. But they don't forget." Lisa's hand went to the safe, her heart heavy. She'd protect Kayla, no matter what. Marcus spent days at the cabin, learning Grace, her laugh, her habits, the way she hummed when she cooked. Ellen taught him to spot tails, to move quiet, skills he hoped he'd never need. The pendant stayed on, its symbol a bridge to his past, and he started to feel it, her love, his real mom, the one who'd never stopped searching. He called his other mom, finally, his voice shaking as he told her he was safe, needed time, would explain soon. She cried, her love pouring through the phone, and Marcus promised himself he'd see her again, when the danger passed. Ellen got word the group was quiet, licking their wounds after the bridge, but Marcus knew better than to relax. The pendant was a reminder they'd come for him, one day. Lisa and Kayla moved to a new town, a fresh start, the carving destroyed, burned in a fire pit behind the motel, its ashes scattered. The police found Henry, alive but shaken, hiding in the woods, Clara's group gone underground. He came home to Ruth, his stories silenced now, his guilt a shadow he'd carry forever. Lisa watched Kayla bloom again, laughing with new friends, her eyes free of that mill's darkness. But at night, Lisa checked the locks, her dreams filled with glinting eyes, symbols glowing. She'd saved her daughter, but the woods had left their mark, a whisper she'd never fully shake. Marcus visited Grace's old house, months later, the pendant still around his neck. It was small, cluttered with photos of him, as a boy, with her smile. He met his other mom, too, her hug fierce, her questions gentle. They cried together, piecing love from truth, and Marcus felt whole, like the boy in the photo had finally come home. Ellen stayed close, her warnings softer now, the group a distant threat. Marcus walked the city sometimes, the pendant warm against his chest, and wondered what he'd carried, what hope, what power. He didn't know, but he knew he was enough, just as he was. Lisa stood on her new porch, Kayla's laughter drifting from inside, a sound that healed her every time. The mill was a memory, Clara a ghost, but the lesson stayed, love was stronger than any ritual, any symbol. She looked at the stars, their light steady, and felt Henry's regret, Ruth's strength, Kayla's courage. They'd survived, and that was everything. The woods might whisper, but Lisa's heart was louder, her daughter's hand in hers a promise that no shadow could break.